Where did God come from, and could there be more gods in the universe or the world?
Right. Where did he come from? Here's the thing. Because it's a legitimate question. Because if you say, and this is the line of reasoning. Well, look, if you say that God always was, well, then why not just say the world always was? If you're going to play that card, I can play that card too. So it's not enough just to say that God always was. You have to say, why is it okay to say God always was? That he didn't come from anybody, but that the world, you can't say that of the world. And here's how I'd answer that, I think. The world, whatever you believe, if you grant that you can't get something from nothing, right? You can't get something from nothing. It can't be the case if you accept, as I think everybody does, that that this option is ruled out. Once upon a time, there was absolutely nothing, and then all of a sudden, there was everything, or anything. You can't get anything from nothing. That just goes against all logic. So if you believe that you can't get something from nothing, and you grant that there is now something, which I'm hoping you do since I'm talking to you, and I'm a something and so are you, then there must have always been a something. Everyone has to believe that something has been forever. Otherwise, we'd still have nothing. You found this? So it's a question of what is the something that has been around forever? Now, here's the thing. Everything we know about the physical world tells us that it's not a good candidate for something that has been around forever. Especially since the 30s of the last century, with the acceptance of the Big Bang Theory, which is pretty much uniform now, which is telling us that this universe, as we now know it, is a one-way show. It's a one-time, one-way show. Everything indicates that energy is being used up, as I mentioned earlier. Second law of thermodynamics is very well established. The suns are running out of energy. They once Einstein hoped, that perhaps there was enough gravity in the universe to, after all the suns expand, that they'd slowly slow down, and then the gravity would start to reverse the process, and perhaps that combustion of the reversing process would cause enough energy to go back to a supercondensed pinhead, which would then explode again, and maybe we have this sort of oscillating universe. That was a theory that was pretty popular at one time. But we now know that there's not nearly enough matter in the universe to have enough gravity to reverse the process of expansion. In fact, much to the discouragement of some, the oddest thing in the world is that we've discovered, it's only about like 6 or 7 years ago, that far from slowing down, like an explosion that slowly slows down and then comes back, far from slowing down, we now know that the outer rim of the universe, the farther out we go, the faster it's expanding. So the expansion seems to be speeding up, and we have no way of explaining that. It's a one-way show, a one-time, one-way show, so far as we can tell. And matter is simply energy, and energy is being used, and everything we know about it is that it's used up. So the physical world, physical reality, isn't a good candidate for the something that must have always been for there to be anything. So whatever there was that is the cause of what is, must be quite different than what is. Because what is, by definition, as far as we know it, can't always have been. It's a little bit like this. If you and I are walking along the road and we come upon a rope hanging down from the sky, and there's just a rope, and it's 2 feet off the ground. I climb it a little bit, and it goes all the way up as far as you can see. And there's this rope here. And then we start talking about it, like, okay, where'd the rope come from, and how's the rope, what's holding up the rope? It's solid, I can climb on it. And you might say, well, no, look, it's rope all the way up. It just goes on and on and on and on. There's nothing holding it up. It's just ropeness, eternal ropeness. Well, that, I would argue, is not a very good explanation, because rope's not the kind of thing that goes on forever. Rope is consistent of twines. You look at it right here, all the twines come to an end. They're connected to other twines, but the idea that there's always been twines doesn't explain anything, and it certainly doesn't explain why it's solid and why it stops here. Rope isn't the kind of thing that explains itself. And I submit to you that all contingent reality, which is simply reality that could be otherwise, this chair, you, me, virtually everything you're seeing here, it came into being, it goes out of being, and it's forever on the precipice of non-being. It's not solid. It disappears in time. that all those things don't explain themselves. None of this explains themselves. And the totality of contingent things don't explain themselves. They're like rope. Everything depends on everything else. It's like dominoes. And at some point, you have to suppose that there must be something that's very much unlike what we're trying to explain what we're in the process of. There must be something other than rope holding up the rope. And that's how I would explain existence. Something has to be eternal, and whatever is eternal must be very different than the nature of matter. Now, that doesn't bring you to a whole personal God that we're talking about, but it certainly starts to point in that direction. And then we could, if you want to suppose, well, why couldn't there be a multitude of gods, like the Mormons believe? There's always been a multitude of gods. And that's, a plausible thing worth discussing. My basic response to it would be this. If there are a number of different gods, then there must be you have to explain, why is this God taking up, say, this amount of space and has this mind, as opposed to this God taking up this amount of space and this and has this mind, and why does this God differ from this God, this God differ from this God, this God differ from this God? And that's kind of like rope. It doesn't explain itself. There must be a more ultimate explanation that accounts for these different gods being the way they are. And in Mormon theology, all the gods come from previous gods who come from previous gods, and so it goes all the way back. I had a discussion with a Mormon missionary on an airplane several years ago, and I said, well, okay, if it's gods all the way back, then, how does the whole thing get off the ground? I mean, how does the thing start? And is there an ultimate God? And if I wanted to talk to that ultimate God, could I? And he said he hadn't ever thought about that before, which kind of surprised me because he was a missionary. But anyways, I don't think, whenever you have things that could be otherwise, you need an explanation for why they are the way they are.